Hello, everyone, and good morning from New Orleans, Louisiana. I am here on the last day of the JOC's Break Bulk and Project Cargo Conference, which has been awesome the last 2 days. But most importantly, I'm here for this week's episode of Logtechlive. Super excited. My name is Eric Johnson. I am the Senior Technology Editor at the Journal of Commerce when I'm not joining you on the first and third Fridays of every month at 10 a.m. Eastern, like clockwork. Super excited about today's show. I have a great guest from a really interesting company. Can't wait to bring him on in about 10 minutes. But before I do, I don't know if you guys can see it. Right outside my window is the mighty Mississippi. It's so cool to be able to see all the different ships that go up and down the river. Really gives you, if you look at things through like the cargo logistics brain that I do, you're just seeing all these different types of cargo moving up and down the Mississippi. So cool backdrop for me today, at least. I don't think you can see it through the glare in the window, but lots of stuff to talk about. I've been talking about this conference that I'm at right now for the last few weeks, but JOC has a couple other events that are coming up that I just wanted to highlight. Registration is open now for JOC's Inland Distribution Conference, which will be September 25th through 27th in beautiful Chicago, downtown Chicago. Same place as last year if you attended. It's a great event. I am leading, like I did last year, a whole bunch of tech-oriented programming about what's going on in the domestic surface transportation space. Some really cool stuff, especially related to the topic that we have today. I'm going to be talking with Chad Olison, who's a guest on this show a few months ago, talking about automation in the truck brokerage space and beyond. So please join us. Reach out to me. There's discounts right now. There's early bird discounts right now, but reach out to me if you want any more information or code for in the future for a discount. Also, registration is open for the IAPH World Ports Conference, which we at the Journal of Commerce help assist with on the programming side. It is not in Chicago. It's actually on the other side of the world in Abu Dhabi. The port of Abu Dhabi is the host sponsor for the event this year. It's over Halloween. It's October 31st through November 2nd in Abu Dhabi. A lot of the agenda is actually already up, 6 months out. It's a great event. If you are in the world of ports, you really need to be there. It's really kind of comprehensive exploration of everything that's going on from an operational standpoint. I will obviously be leading a bunch of sessions around digitization and tech in the port space. So would love to see you there. It's going to be an experience being in that part of the world and getting a real kind of global view of what's going on port-wise. A couple other things. You've heard me say this the last few episodes. I'm going to keep saying it. Blended Pledge. Please support this cause. Once again, this is a cause that helps people. Basically, it helps get a better representation of voices at industry events, right? We all know the world is not a bunch of white guys in real life, and yet it can seem that way at conferences. Blended Pledge helps get support travel costs and other sort of support costs for people who want to travel and speak at or just be representative at industry events. So someone, please own this. Like, make this your company's kind of keystone initiative. And then I wanted to say happy 5-year anniversary to Sarah and Let's Talk Supply Chain. I think she put out a note from our between our last episode and today that it's been 5 years. It's amazing. What she's built is truly incredible. I'm honored to be a part of it every episode. And it's just great to be in and around Sarah's community that she's built. It's just a great group of people. Everyone you meet, super helpful, super knowledgeable, and just friendly and helpful, really. Thank you so much to Sarah for helping get this show off the ground. We're almost coming up on 2 years, and I can't even count how many episodes. So it's just great to be a part of this, and congratulations on 5, and here's to another 5. Okay, let's get to news of the week. I wrote just yesterday, we put up a story about kind of how partnerships flourishing between technology providers is no new thing. I've written a ton about this on joc.com over the last few years. This has been a key kind of uh, development, I would say. And it's not just about kind of like sales channel partnerships, but it's actually like system integration, native integrations. It's about connecting two pieces of software that are really complementary um, in a way that's very seamless for either someone in an operational kind of user role, or kind of connecting those systems so that that operator can give information and give a better customer experience to their customers. So just wrote about one particular development yesterday, but also touching on how a lot of these partnerships are flourishing. And look, we're in a market now where not every company is getting the funding rounds that they used to get, 12 to 24 months ago. One way to amplify value is to create these strategic partnerships instead of going it alone and trying to just drive sales opportunities on your own, right? So we'll be talking a little bit about this topic later today with my guest, but highlight this story just to double down on how that's going on right now. Next story I wanted to highlight is from one of my colleagues, Ari Ash, who wrote a very interesting piece that also went up yesterday on joc.com about chassis. So I wrote a story a couple weeks ago about a decision or a complaint that was filed between Hapag-Lloyd, the container shipping line, and its subcontractor CSX, the Class 1 railroad. And essentially, it stems from another complaint that a 3PL filed against Hapag-Lloyd because this 3PL had been charged a ton of demurrage for boxes in Nashville that were essentially stuck in a CSX rail ramp, and they couldn't evacuate because they didn't have the chassis to do it. So it's a bit of a convoluted case. Encourage you to read the stories that we have posted on that. But Ari took a crack. Ari, who knows more about chassis in his little finger than I do in my entire body, took a crack in a really, really interesting story about kind of the nuance of this and the commercial relationships between all these parties and whether it's really Hapag who should be kind of the voice, should say the one that, instead of sort of trying to pass the buck, so to speak, onto its subcontractor, whether it, as the party that contracted with the NVO and on a through bill of lading, whether ultimately it's the shipping line's responsibility. It's not really just about Hapag. This is a much bigger issue, and definitely encourage you to read Ari's story. Ari is just sort of the chassis guru anyway, so anything he writes about chassis is worthwhile catching up with. So last story I wanted to highlight is my newsletter from last week, where I kind of did something a little off the normal pattern of what I do. I kind of took something that someone else wrote and broke it down and kind of looked at it through the lens of manufacturing potentially returning to the US and what that means from a supply chain perspective. It's a little hard for me to describe all the little permutations that I went through in this. So definitely it's better if you read it, but I'll just say that I think there's a bit of the idea of a lot of software that's been funded is around this idea of builders. And I think sometimes investors sort of are misaligned with what those builders are trying to do and how difficult it is for the companies that are affected by what the builders are trying to do, is to sort of adopt that vision. So extremely kind of mysterious sounding description that I just gave. I think just read it. I would love your feedback. This was definitely not my normal type of newsletter, so I'm eager to hear what people think about my thoughts on this. But in the meantime, definitely read it if you can. And it's good to be writing again. taking that like hiatus, I didn't get to exercise that part of my brain that's sort of outside of the normal JOC.com stuff. So without any further ado, I want to bring my guest on today. Seth Page, who's COO of a company called Throughput, is joining me today. We are both in hotel rooms. I'm in New Orleans. Seth, where are you at? You're on mute, by the way. Just make sure you're.
Yeah, I'm here from. I was in Bentonville early this week, Arkansas, and I'm up in Kansas City right now. So I think my closest river is probably the Blue River, a little bit smaller than the Mississippi.
Just a little bit smaller. Yeah. Well, Seth, I'm so glad you could join. I met your co-founder, Ali, a long time ago, at least a year ago, more than that. We had really fascinating conversations about his background and kind of the thoughts on the company. But I would love to hear, and audience, I'm sure would love to hear kind of a bit about your background and then exactly what Throughput is.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of people in this industry, you tend to have a somewhat eclectic background. You don't typically go to supply chain earlier in life. You end up there and start
like astronaut, fireman, supply chain, right?
Yeah, no. Surfer, professional surfer was in there at some point. I grew up in Santa Cruz and in Silicon Valley. Yeah, I mean, I was in the 80s. So, I was conceived in 69, born in 70, late 79 through the whole 80s. I was a programmer, right? I was writing code, software code, doing hardware hacks, freaking on telecommunication lines, hacking in the old traditional sense of just taking things apart and seeing how they worked. And a lot of networking and communications, working on the ARPANET before the web, right? When it was actually the ARPANET through UC Santa Cruz, which had a big computing center. And really was just the absolute geek, pimples, hair. I mean, right out of Revenge of the Nerds, without the glasses. And, fortunately that phase passed. And I, being in Silicon Valley, I ended up in Europe, Lord knows how, and was doing cross-border deals. So I was mostly a deal maker, an investment banker, a financier, setting up cross-border joint ventures, corp dev, biz dev, you name it. And then worked in Frankfurt, London, New York, Silicon Valley, doing financings at over 50 transactions. So IPOs, secondaries, private placements, take publics, take privates. Eventually got into private equity and angel investing after my first few companies. And really in the 2000s is when I kind of took all the dark arts that you had learned from the 90s investment banking and the financial centers and put that to good work, right? Because you see a lot of really smart founders who didn't really get operations, they didn't really get businesses, and they tended to make poor financial decisions. And so I set myself out to not be one of them and started the first of what became 8 companies, 6 of which have exited to date, and quite a few others that I was on the board and advisory board of. And that's what I've been doing since. Everything's been B2B, everything's been enterprise, and it's really been, how do you take diverse, large amounts of data and various types of compute, networking, and storage, which is now kind of what we call ML, machine learning, and AI in its various forms. Back then, it was just, I could actually do a lot on a mainframe or on a mini computer or on a client server network. And that's what I've been doing. Last 4 have all been in the industrial space, industry 4.0, industrial IoT, supply chain AI, industry, transformations, whatever you want to call it. But really, it's how do you solve real world business and operational problems with data that you already have and some massive compute ability in ways that the tech guys in Silicon Valley aren't really thinking about.
Frankfurt probably wasn't great for surfing, so I'm guessing. So,
not even river surfing.
I don't recall any good beaches. That's super interesting background, and definitely not the typical background for people that I have on this show. So fantastic to be able to hear about your experience in that and how it's relating. So what is Throughput? I mean, I would say, like, in my conversations with your colleague, Ali, this is not one of those companies that you can like describe in 2 words, right? Not that many companies are these days, but like, let me hear kind of in your words what it is you do.
Yeah. We don't have one of those flashy Y Combinator animations with like one word that flashes and raises you at $200 million. And unfortunately, I don't have the looks or the height of Adam Newman, right? I really think of it in the large picture as supply chain AI optimization, which is, as I said before, how do you leverage existing diverse data sets that you already have in-house, right? and operational AI or big compute like we have to provide your people with better business results, operational results, financial results. And more importantly now too, a lot of people are thinking about how do we link that to sustainability results? How do I become more profitable, move more product, right? But in a way that's more sustainable overall. Because you typically have a lot more institutional investors asking for it. And let's get real, we all live in the same world. So we all eventually have to breathe the same air and drink the same water. And, if you think of it from a layman's point of view, what it's really doing is, what we call supply chain AI, which is just AI that's been fine-tuned for years to run on and look at supply chain problems from raw materials to retail and everything in between. It's the supply chain AI is just stitching together these diverse, disparate data sets. It's standardizing the data structures. It's putting them on the same frequency, right? And then with that, it can kind of, stitch together kind of a rich tapestry or treasure map, if you will, of your own virtual supply chain, true end to end, on top of all these different point solutions that everyone's built out over decades, in some cases over half a century. And what that allows you to do then is to do rapid diagnostics on supply chains, to come in a matter of days or weeks, understand where those treasure chests that are hidden in my supply chain, they're just waste right now. How much gold coin is in there from a Mario Brothers point of view, right? How do I unlock that? And then leave the decisions to humans, right? Because I'm not going to let an AI tell me how to run my business. I just want it to crunch all the numbers and surface the best results that allow me to run that business better and more efficiently. And you don't need any rip and replace for that. And it allows you to do things like, in the military, which is the biggest supply chain in the world for the US, to do predictive replenishment, right? Which is how to use AI to replenish materials based on real lead times and actual supply chain bottlenecks. You could manage around those constraints. And again, that allows you to do more throughput of materials, hence our name. But that operational throughput actually has a link up into theory of constraints, which is throughput as a measure of free cash flow, right, of profitability. And mathematically, you could link those two worlds, but organizationally, I think, as you know, those two worlds very rarely speak to each other.
They have not been linked very well, right?
Yeah.
So a couple things. The one thing that stood out in sort of understanding what you guys do is like there's a massive misunderstanding in my view that sort of took place over the last couple of years when supply chain became front page news and not business inside of business page news, is the conflation between the world that I primarily focus on, freight, transportation, logistics, ports, that type of thing, and supply chain, which is obviously a much broader discipline of which the thing that I do is part of, right? So it was really interesting to hear kind of both you talk about this, but when I first heard about Throughput, kind of really, because honestly, most of the time when I hear end to end, my eyes glaze over because I know how difficult that has been and how unrealistic it's been actually in past generations and iterations of software. So what, like, is it a structural kind of software kind of thing that's enabling us to kind of really examine this in a new way that wasn't possible in previous generations? What's changed, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, reality is it's kind of like moving from stone tablets to pencil and paper to the printing press, to abscess and eventually to rulers, slide rules and calculators, and then Excel spreadsheets, right? This is just another way to do massive calculations that allow you to grab more revenue out of that quote unquote end-to-end supply chain, which we really think of as, it's not a supply chain network. I mean, theory of constraints, it's a chain, and you need the whole 9 yards and the weakest link thing. But really, it's a highly dimensional, multimodal supply chain network with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. When you get into the bigger companies in the military, you're looking at millions and even billions of endpoints, because you have so many upstream suppliers, tier 1, tier 2, and beyond. Raw materials beyond that, and containers. So much downstream going on with transportation, logistics. Class 1 railroads, multimodal, and you name it, ships and planes and trains and automobiles, and candy probably mixed up in there while in the movie. And the way we started it was our founders, our investors, our advisors. We cut our teeth, particularly Ollie, in war zone logistics, right? Working on oil and gas, pouring cement.
Right? Yeah.
out in, Yemen and Pakistan and all sorts of unpleasant places that people didn't want to work. But the reality is that's how we keep our economy going, right? And a lot of our investors, they were doing military logistics in the 80s, right, for the U.S. Air Force and for large defense OEMs and for the NSA and other three-letter agencies that go bump in the night on mainframes that were plugged into the ARPANET. So they've been solving these problems a lot longer than kids popping out of Stanford with an idea and a dream. That's the world that keeps things going. And they saw, when we were doing this, that in the $96 trillion economy, right, which of course is all run by these global supply chains, about $22 trillion of that is just waste that's decimated annually in the supply chain, right? Mostly preventable. So you've got a huge amount of money, shareholder value that's just being annihilated. A lot of that could go back into R&D, right? It can go back into CapEx and OpEx, into workers' pay during inflationary periods, back to investors, back to communities, back into better recycling of water that's coming out as waste. And if you can capture just a part of that as a company or an organization, you could run your business much better and get, realizer better shareholder value than your cohorts. And ultimately, typically, it's proven, over the long period that companies that invest more back into their companies as R&D and otherwise have better shareholder price, have better shareholder value, and outperform their peers from a shareholder point of view, which means you're getting better distributions, better dividends, and people are paid more, right? So it's a net win-win-win for everyone. Versus going in as a PE firm, where I also used to work, and just cutting heads and cutting budgets indiscriminately because you're trying to hit that short-term quarterly goal. And that's really where we started. Was if you're going to solve this big problem, you got to look at every piece of the pie. You can't just look at logistics in a silo, right? You can't just look at the warehouse in the silo with a WMS system or an IMS system or TMS system, or manufacturing with PLCs and MES systems. You've got in SCADA systems. You've got to be able to look at all these different systems that are built by thousands of vendors over the last 50, 60 years. They don't talk to each other. They were never meant to talk to each other. They don't speak the same language, right, but they all have underlying data. So if you can just leave that in place, because you can't upset your current operations, pull data out of those systems with connectors and APIs, and then start to systemically with AI do an overlay where you're optimizing systemically everything going on, then you don't have these subsystems, these point solutions from these various vendors working against each other. Because if one of those speeds up and is actually more efficient, it actually then you get stock out further upstream, right? You get starve out further upstream from there. You get inventory build up further downstream. And all this happens with the bullwhip effect, where the group in the middle doesn't know what's happening 2 links upstream and 2 links downstream because they don't see that. And we tie that all together, give everyone, their own dashboard that they understand with their KPIs that they get judged on, but it all ties back into the same back-end engine. So what one group is doing to optimize is helping the entire group. So if you're speeding up in one area, you're speeding up upstream, and you're making sure you're doing more inventory turns and flipping downstream. Because otherwise, if you're not moving product, that warehouse is going to stack up quick, and then you end up with the problem you talked about earlier with the trains, right?
Well, so I mean, one thing I wanted to address is, like, one of the first conversations I had with Ali was, who's CEO and your co-founder, was about a topic that I frankly have been covering forever, which is how difficult it is to capture demand signal, turn that into, inventory management that's efficient. And like, we had the world's greatest ever case study that was not just one company, but literally every company now has dealt with this over the last 2 years and are still dealing with it. And that's having a knock-on effect on ocean carriers, and that has a knock-on effect on other, shipping categories, right? So, what has been the problem in terms of, like, capturing demand signal and turning that into an effective means to manage inventory, right? There's that disconnect is there for everybody to see right now.
Yeah, and you see it. It's you've got too much of the wrong things, far too little of the right things, and then everyone goes from just in time to just in case, which is really just too much, because you're you're guesstimating. You don't really know it's there. And then, as our systems predicted for a lot of our clients, they're going to end up with far too much inventories if they don't slow down that demand signal so that they optimize their buffer. I mean, the reality is
this is a long-term solution for most companies. So
yeah, well, it's 95%. If you go in, and my last company was acquired, and I worked for a public company for a few years. And you flew around the world talking to CEOs and COOs and CFOs and walking the floors in the warehouses, and it's everyone's trying to do the right thing. But the reality is they've built up this spaghetti of various point systems over many decades. They all sit on data, right? Everyone produces data, whether they know it or not. Yep. But 95% of these companies are using outdated demand forecasting software. Lots of times it's still in PowerPoint, right? It kind of extracts up to PowerPoint for the CFO. And legacy software tools that are just built off of old data and old assumptions, right? If I'm getting everyone together towards the end of the year and looking at last year's numbers to try to forecast next year's number based on where I am right now, the world's going to change a lot between last December and today. Sure. That demand signal has changed, not just a signal. We're talking about demand signals for every single SKU at every single location, for every single customer, going through every single different type of transportation link where you have different types of OTIFs and different types of quality, different types of freight. And so if you're not looking at a real-time demand signal, or at least a near real-time demand signal, which is only possible when you're crunching things like through a supply chain AI engine, coming from multiple data sources, you're going to be working with that old demand forecast that you created, 2, 3, 4 quarters ago, and that's based on data from 1, 2, 3, 4 years ago. Right. And the world changes, and the world keeps changing faster and faster. Right? It's Ray Kurzweil, right? The singularity is near. Technology is advancing exponentially. Humans, we're still kind of advancing linearly. And so what we do is we tap into those multiple systems. We pick up a real-time or a near real-time demand signal, and we're constantly on a SKU level, right, on a customer level, on a warehouse level, on a route level. We're optimizing every single day what the inventory should be for every single SKU you have. So if you're a huge supermarket in the US or Europe or Japan, we're looking at 250,000, 300,000 SKUs daily. The AI is crunching it, and it's automatically adjusting those buffers, and it's doing dynamic inventory optimization on every single SKU for every single location, not based on a region, not based on a model that was created before. And that allows you to get that pull. And if you can get that pull, you get that good demand signal, you can couple that not with planned forecasting on what you thought was going to be the demand 6, 9, 12 months ago, but what the actual demand is, and your real capacity. And that then allows you to optimize between those two endpoints and the constraints that surround them versus all the bottlenecks that are popping up in between. And that's really where the AI does its magic. It's defining this model, and then it's optimizing within the model. It's kind of like building a house in the middle of the city where it's like, hey, I don't have 15 acres of land to build a house. I've got 3 high rises around me, and this is my constraint. This is what the city allows me to do, and here's my code. And how do I optimize the perfect house within this set of constraints, both physical and code that the city implores on me? And then, like I said, if you can catch that real demand, you can match it to actual capacity, and you get much, much, much better results. And that squeezes out that waste, not from a lean point of view, right? You're not doing just in time. You're not doing just in case. You're optimizing every SKU daily in between those two. And that allows you to free up a lot of working capital.
What are the demand signals? Point of sale?
Point of sale, POs, CRM systems. A lot of it, we've gone into companies.
Those have been the demand signals forever, right? Like what's been.
But you have to tap them all at the same time, and you have to update them as they get updated, right? And companies typically forecast once, and then they rerun every once in a while.
You're dead on there, because I think, I talk mostly to transportation providers, right? And there was definitely a sense that their forecast for 22 was based on what happened in 21, and their forecast for 23 was based on what happened in 22. And those are the two most ahistoric years probably ever in our lifetimes. Maybe financial crisis is up there too, but there's a lot of, from a transportation provider perspective, there's a lot of kind of like, how can you rely on a forecast like that? So really timely to be talking to you about this, I think.
Yeah, and the problem is you can't. And the companies that do over time have inferior results to the companies that are innovating and trying different things. Because the closer you can get to that real signal, the more money you can save, the more efficient you can be, the more profitable you can be, and the better you can reinvest back into your company, your shareholders, and your people.
You've talked a lot about the magic of AI. It's everywhere right now. It's one of these things, I've said this on a couple episodes where we've had people who are, specializing in this area. It's like blockchain, but real, in that it's become this term that people who have no business even caring about are suddenly feel like they have to care about it. It's like the plumbing in a way, that they all of a sudden need to know about. How do you describe what AI is and does to someone like me who has no programming background, that is in logistics operations or is in a supply chain management role? How do you sort of like break it down for them so it's like a 3-year-old would understand, or a third grader, let's say, would understand?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you the classic definition from the textbooks we all learned, but that's boring as hell, and all of us will glaze over. The way I look at AI, and we've been doing AI for years over many companies, is it's a method of using machine approaches, and if you will, to a certain extent, machine intelligence to tackle problems with huge amount of calculationable force, right? Huge amount of compute, huge amount of storage, huge amount of networking, often in the cloud, but can be on premise, and to solve problems that require that huge compute in ways that humans just wouldn't do. None of us, you could take every data scientist in the world, really smart people, a lot of them with PhDs, and one AI engine cranking 24/7 can do more work than every data scientist in the world, for actual just raw compute power, right? It's that's what humans don't do that, right? We're great at gisting things from limited information, or seeing big pictures from a very disparate category, but teasing out all those little things and those trends that humans miss. That's what AI is great at. So let the AI do the grunt work. And you think of like generative AI. That's the real sexy thing, right?
ChatGPT. I had to ask you about that too, right? So,
I mean, if I had $1 for every time I heard that, and the problem is, the board starts talking about this at the country club, and they meet with the boards and they start talking about it. Now the CEO's got to worry about it, the CFO worry about it, and then they ask their IT team, "What are you doing with generative AI?" It's the next big thing. And let's get real. Generative AI is a little teeny piece of a big AI field. Mm-hmm. It's really sexy. It's probably going to change search, right, in ways humans interact, as consumers with their devices and with their information. But it's a B2C tool. It's for consumers. It's not a B2B tool, right? Are you going to make big industrial decisions with ChatGPT today? No, it's writing fake articles and fake job descriptions. It's doing all sorts. It's only as good as the data it scrubs. And right now, the data it gets is only up to 21. So it's not even got up-to-date data, right? And I'm talking that's publicly available data, not private data that we all produce in our companies here. So, I look at it, and unless you've been, working on a supply chain AI like we have an engine, right, that's been solving, trillions and trillions of calculations across thousands of different use cases, across hundreds of different, companies with many thousands of data sets. That's been tuned specifically for supply chain. That's there to solve supply chain and operational problems. Yeah. If I want to play chess, with Big Blue, Big Blue's been training on data around chess for a long time. It's going to solve chess really well. Yeah. It's not going to solve other problems well because it's never trained on that data. And ChatGPT is like that. It infers human intelligence. It's not intelligent. It infers that intelligence from what it's reading out there in a way that tricks you into thinking it's human. But it's easy to spoof. And I'm always saying, hey, it's great, and there'll be cool uses for it. But there's no magic algorithm, right? When people tell you about an algo, right, you really have to have, in our case, we have this millions and millions of algos running for customers, individual algorithms for every different SKU, every different location, every different point on a supply chain network, right? If someone says they have a magic algo, they're smoking crack. It's just not there, right? It's like that unicorn that's out there.
Well, this comes in like the term autonomous supply chain, right? Comes up, right? And this this is another red flag for me, right? Is like I already starting to see like this sort of expectation that some form of generative AI is just going to be like, what is the best way to get this product from there to there? What is the best time frame? And it's just going to tell you, well, well, Seth, you should have shipped it yesterday, but since you didn't do it yesterday, we'll have to do it tomorrow. And like, I'm with you. I think that's not even a pipe dream. It's just that's like movie stuff.
And you need human intuition and reason, just reasonableness on top of it. Like, so we surface recommendations from the AI in a readable form, but let humans make the decisions, because ultimately, the AI is only as good as if you've got 15 recommendations on how to save $17 million next quarter, so you can hit that EPS goal the CFO's jamming everyone on, right? Move enough product to do that, the right product to at the right time to the most profitable customers. I might know that this factory over here is going through a union renegotiation right now. Right. And that's the last group I want to touch. The AI doesn't know that. It's never been fed that data. Right. So, the human's going to know, hey, let's not do a project there because it's very sensitive. We don't want to disrupt that human to human dynamic balance. Let's do it over here at, a factory down in Georgia that has a similar problem, and relationships are good with the Teamsters and the unions and the workers down there, and get it done. And I always say, just to take it back, just to make it real simple, when I think of algorithms, right, think of the mapping software you use, right? When you're stuck at the airport and you just want to get to, into the city to the meeting, you just type in it and it shows you 3 or 4 routes and it shows you the best time. You don't care whether it's using a triple exponential smoothing algorithm or a random walk or what really cool algorithmic name the IT guys are talking about. Well, you don't care. I just want in 2 or 3 seconds, show me the best route down there. Let me click on it and take me there. And it's feeding from all these different places, and it's invisible. And good AI is invisible. It's in the background doing the hard work and surfacing it to you in a user interface, a UI that you and I can use, that everyone could use. And we're the same. To me, if you're looking at something, if I have to go call the IT department to use software every day or get a report, then the software is no good, right? It's software that's made for tech people and not made for operational or business people or supply chain people. It's not helping me solve a problem in my 4 walls. It's making IT excited about a new algorithm. What?
I had someone at our event. We had an event a couple months ago, TPM Tech, and I thought this will stick with me for a long time. A longtime software vendor in the logistics space said, the best AI is no UI. It should be invisible. It shouldn't even be something that the user even thinks is going on. It should just, so, and I had another great thought that just vanished out of my head. I'll think of it. I will think of it.
Coffee.
Yeah, I haven't had enough coffee. I spilled coffee all over my hand this morning, so I had to put toothpaste on it to.
Oh my gosh! It's why I'm wearing a brown shirt.
In me and too much on my hand.
That's the AI didn't know that was happening, by the way.
It did not know. It did not. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. Another great example of that sort of human reasonableness, right? Is I remember someone discussing kind of an optimization engine that a container terminal was using, and it was spitting and it was making a very strange decision based on productivity at a certain point in time on a specific day at a specific time each day, and they couldn't figure out why there was this weird dip in productivity, and they figured out, a human knew that there was a food truck that came at that time every Tuesday, and the terminal just emptied because everyone loved that food truck. That wasn't showing up in any data point that the engine could ingest. So
if you're on a German work site and the boss brings in a case of beer halfway through the day in the middle of summer, all work stops for 10 minutes. Everyone walks over, they talk to the boss, they crack a beer, they take a break. Yeah. There's zero productivity. But I can tell you, productivity increases, much more after that 10 to 15 minute break.
So two questions before we have, because we're just coming up on time. I have a feeling I know what your answer is going to be, but I still want to tease this out a little bit. Okay. If you are in the position of let's just assume that everyone's pretty eyes wide open about researching and understanding where their company needs to be on AI. Are you still in a safe place if you are understanding what's out there, but you're not committing to something? Or are you in a better place if you just say, we need to be in the water and not sitting on a chaise lounge watching other people in the water and seeing if the water's cold or too hot, or right? Like, is it still safe to be in a wait and see approach on this stuff?
I mean, yes and no. I think for, let's call it AI, again, the AI is there to solve business and operational problems, right? So that's just a buzzword. You can just take that and throw that out. The question is, are there solutions out there that help me realize my business and my operational, my supply chain goals faster and better, so that I can out innovate my competitors in the field? And for that, you've got your typical adoption curve, and you've got your innovation leaders, your early adopters, the kind of the front of the curve, where they're trying new things because they're trying to get better results. And by and large, they're getting medium to long-term greater shareholder value because they're reinvesting in their company. The companies that are laggards and are wait and see, not from the hype, but just from the better solutions in general that are out there, they're the ones that over time typically die out. When companies stop innovating, when they stop investing, when all they do is focus on being conservative and business-wise and not taking risks, well, then your business typically doesn't risk, and you don't enter new markets, you miss opportunities, you don't bring out new products and services that can serve you better. So
the cost
we always say, hey,
gets you.
Yeah. I mean, it's every company has data, and you're not going to rip and replace what you have, right? That's just reality. So the question is, what technologies can I put on top of my existing infrastructure that help me get more out of it? Because the CFO is paid for all that tech a long time ago, over many, many years, maybe many, many CFOs. They do not want to rip something out and go do a multi-million-dollar 3 to 5 year digital transformation that the CIO is drooling over. They're like, hey, I got quarterly results I got to hit. Everyone's bonuses in the company is kind of dependent on that. How do I help my operational people hit their KPIs so I could hit my financial KPIs? And that's going to be looking at new technologies that incorporate AI to crunch all that data and make recommendations. Do you need ChatGPT, to run a freight forwarding company? Probably not. I don't see where that's going to fit. I could hypothesize if you give me a beer or two. Do I want to be looking at different solutions that are going to help me optimize for who are my best shippers, right? Who are my best customers? Who are the most profitable? Who do I get the biggest contribution margin from, right? Who shows up on time, at the docks most frequently, and they pay in full most frequently too. So it's looking at all these red flags. It's doing multi-dimensional segmentation, customer segmentation, and helping clients understand what. Right now, they're just crunching out with Tableau and Minitab and Power BI and honestly, Excel. Like, that's still the biggest tool that every company uses.
Sure,
always gets Excel
that's
down to
the biggest
Excel.
competitor of every software is Excel, right? So
yeah. I mean, if you don't know what to do, you just start with Excel, and it's not a bad place to start, but you shouldn't end there. Right? You should be running your company off of, as we said, those real-time demand signals, that real-time capacity management, as opposed to quarterly on Excel sheets. That's for the financial geeks in Wall Street. That's great for them. That's great for the speculators. But as supply chains are 24/7, 365. Someone's got to move this stuff, right? Someone's got to make this stuff. Someone's got to get it to the right place at the right time, so the rest of us can have toilet paper and chicken and pasta on the shelves. And so all those companies have the raw materials they need. And if the rest of us kind of before COVID, it was kind of things showed up on time, and people never really understood if you pulled up kind of, the covers and looked deep down in the engine of what makes, global manufacturing and supply chain and logistics work. Everyone's putting out fires all the time.
The industry was a victim of its own success, basically. And when that's, I think, was, for me, is a big lesson. It's like they did it so well that when it didn't perform as well as it had, it became this big problem, when actually it still largely performs, just not as efficiently.
Correct. So it's still a lot of the same, by the way. Not a lot's changed. We're still overreacting in one direction and overreacting in the other direction. Right. Sure. It's still, you have these bottlenecks, these constraints, and then these bullwhip effects just are racing up and down the supply chain.
Yep.
And the problem is you just have waste in all the wrong spots, and you're missing huge opportunities in the right spots. So I say, try with technologies, do pilots with innovative firms that help you solve problems that you specifically have. Share those problems with those innovators out there so that you can partner up with them. But a huge data lake, right? You're just going to throw data in a data lake. That's not going to solve your problem. right?
Yeah.
That's
So I'm hearing jump in the pool. You have no excuse. Real quick.
But don't swim out to the out past the Bay of Monterey. You
Yeah.
want to stay closer to the beaches there for a while.
So last question, every guest I ask, who's your favorite band or musician and why?
Wow. I mean, when you get to my age, on the back nine of life, as I call it, I mean, you got to break it in decades, right? It's growing up with my parents.
I need one, and we're running out of time. So
okay, I'll do it real fast. Give me 20 seconds. 70s, Eagles, Doors, Led Zeppelin. 80s would be Oingo Boingo, Journey, Echo and the Money Man. 90s, Red Hot Chili Peppers, English Beat, General Public, Fishbone, Dead Kennedys, Cult, Faith No More. 2000, anything that would keep the kids from screaming in their baby seats on road trips. And 2020s, anything I feel like singing in the car on long road trips while my kids have their AirPods in, from those other 4 decades. That's
wow. All right.
The mood you're in is the music mix you play, right?
I totally agree.
Like the supply chain, it changes all the time.
Yeah, for sure. It's eccentric, right? Supply chain's eccentric. We have to have eccentric music taste. So
yeah. It's an extension of who we are and our demands. So it's going to be changing all the time because we're all changing all the time.
Seth, thank you so much. This has been super. It zoomed by. Really appreciate you taking the time to walk us through. What's the best way for people to reach you?
Yeah, you could reach me at Seth@Throughput.ai. You can drop me a DM on LinkedIn or on Twitter. Seth R. Page, the /LinkedIn thing. Or just, give me a call, 415-290-9999. If you're a headhunter, please don't call. or an IT consultant slapping your services.
There you go.
If you have a problem you want to solve, give us a call.
Awesome. Thank you, Seth. This is fantastic. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. From one hotel room to the other, I really enjoyed it. And I hope we both make it outside today to our respective rivers.
Definitely. Yeah. Sure. Thanks so much, Seth. All right. Great conversation. I've been running a little late the last couple episodes. Sorry for that. Hope everyone is hanging on. Real quick, dad joke of the week. Since we talked about forecasting, I thought I'd do like a weather joke. What does a cloud wear under its raincoat? Thunderwear. It's pretty juvenile, I know. Sorry. I'll come back with a better one next week. May 5th is our next episode. We have another great guest lined up. Someone with lots of strong opinions. So really looking forward to that. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, Nicole, our awesome producer. Thank you to Sarah and the Let's Talk Supply Chain team. Again, congrats on 5 years. Sign up for the Blended Pledge. Register for IAPH. Register for Inland. Read my newsletter. Go to joc.com. Thanks again to Seth and Throughput. And I'll see you all in 2 weeks. Have a great weekend, everyone.